The fine dust of the American Old West rose with each step of the horses, painting the air with golden hues at dusk. Sarah Montgomery, in her early 20s, felt the weight of the world on her delicate shoulders, as heavy as the dusty wedding dress she kept in her trunk. Her blue eyes, once filled with a youthful sparkle, now carried a deep melancholy, a reflection of the circumstances that trapped her. Daughter of a small rancher on the brink of bankruptcy, Sarah had been promised in marriage to the most powerful and feared man in the region, Silas Blackwood. Silas wasn't just a rancher. He was a land baron whose property stretched as far as the eye could see, and his word was law in Red Rock Creek. A corpulent man with a cold, domineering gaze, Silas saw Sarah as just another one of his possessions, a means to consolidate his power and expand his influence over the Montgomery's land. The union was, for Sarah's parents, the only salvation for their family from ruin and expulsion from their land. For Sarah, it was a sentence. The main conflict was clear: the sacrifice of her freedom and perhaps her soul for the love of her family. But fate, or perhaps bad luck, had other plans. On a stormy night, a wounded stranger knocked on the Montgomery's door. Caleb Riggs, a man with a face marked by a hard life and flashing green eyes, was a fugitive from the law, a noble-hearted outlaw who stole from the rich to give to the needy, a Robin Hood in the style of the Old West. Sarah, with her innate kindness, tended to his wounds, and during the weeks that followed, while Caleb recovered hidden on the ranch, an unexpected connection blossomed between them. Amidst the fear and uncertainty of her future with Silas, Caleb represented a spark of hope, the promise of a life lived on her own terms, of a love she never imagined possible. But the time for the wedding with Silas was fast approaching, and Caleb's presence, though a well-kept secret, was a ticking time bomb about to explode. Sarah was caught between loyalty to her family and a forbidden love, a choice made impossible by the morals of the time and the relentless power of Silas Blackwood. Caleb's presence on the Montgomery ranch became a secret as well kept as it was dangerous, a flame threatening to consume them all. Sarah and Caleb spent nights talking in whispers, exchanging stories and dreams under the starry veil of the desert. She told him about her family's pressure, Silas's constant threat, and the burden of a loveless marriage. Caleb, in turn, revealed his past, the injustices that turned him into a fugitive, and his vision of a more just world where freedom wasn't a luxury for a few. The love that blossomed between them was an escape, an oasis amidst the aridity of Sarah's reality. They planned a life together, far from Silas's clutches, but the fear of putting Sarah's family at risk was a constant shadow. Caleb, with his protective instinct, felt increasingly uneasy. He knew his presence was a risk, but leaving was torture. Meanwhile, Silas Blackwood intensified his wedding preparations. His cunning was as sharp as his greed. He sent extravagant gifts to the Montgomerys, small gestures that were, in reality, reminders of his generosity and the control he exerted over the family. His men, crude and loyal henchmen, were often seen lurking around the Montgomery's land, not just as protection, but as subtle surveillance. Jedediah, Silas's most loyal and cruel henchman, had a particularly suspicious look. Noticing the change in Sarah's behavior, the melancholy disguised by a strange, new resilience. One day, while Sarah was in town to buy supplies, she overheard troubling conversations at the saloon. Rumors about a new sheriff, Sheriff Brody, a relentless man with a nose for fugitives and a particular focus on Caleb Riggs, spread like wildfire. Brody was known for his dedication to cleaning up the region, and his arrival was an imminent threat to Caleb's safety and consequently to Sarah's secret. The tension escalated exponentially. Silas's visits became more frequent and invasive. He pressured Sarah, demanding she show more enthusiasm for the wedding, hinting that he knew more than he let on about her reluctance. During one of these visits, Silas found a scarf Sarah had sewn for Caleb, fallen on the barn floor. He picked it up, a cold smile on his lips, and asked Sarah about the object's origin, in a tone that brooked no lies. Sarah, her heart pounding, invented a story about it being a gift for her father. But Silas's gaze, which pierced her soul, made it clear he didn't believe a word. The net was closing in. The tension on the Montgomery ranch was palpable, thick as the air before a storm. Silas Blackwood, with his predatory instinct sharpened, felt something was wrong. He summoned Jedediah and instructed him to intensify surveillance on the Montgomerys, especially on Sarah. "There's a smell of deceit in the air, Jedediah." "I don't like smells like that," he growled, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the Montgomery ranch nestled under the afternoon sky. The last straw came during a visit from Silas. He arrived unannounced, his horses kicking up dust at the ranch entrance. As Sarah helped her mother serve tea on the porch, a sharp scream echoed from the barn. It was Jedediah. Caleb, impatient and feeling cornered, had tried to escape through a back window of the barn, but Jedediah had spotted him. A frantic chase began. Silas, with a cruel smile, drew his pistol. "Stop right there, fugitive, or I'll blow your rancher friend's head off," he yelled, pointing the gun at Sarah's father, who had rushed out to see what was happening. Caleb froze, his eyes fixed on Sarah's. In an instant, she saw the sacrifice he was willing to make for her, and a wave of despair and love washed over her dot in a pure reflex of desperation and a love stronger than fear. Sarah, with surprising agility, threw the teapot of boiling water she was holding at Jedediah's face, blinding him momentarily. The henchman's scream of pain caused a distraction, and Caleb seized the opportunity to tackle Silas, who lost his balance and his weapon. In a flash, Caleb recovered Silas's pistol and, without thinking twice, pointed it at Jedediah's chest. "Go! Go now!" Caleb shouted to Sarah's family, whose parents were paralyzed with fear and astonishment. "Run to town, to the sheriff. I'll handle them." But Silas, furious and humiliated, roared orders to his other henchmen, who were now approaching. "Don't let him escape. Shoot to kill." The shootout began, with bullets whizzing past Sarah's head. Caleb, with impressive skill, covered the Montgomery family's escape, firing with precision. Sarah saw her father drag her mother, both stumbling in shock, toward the wagon. She looked at Caleb, their eyes meeting in a moment of pure connection, a silent, painful farewell. Caleb knew he couldn't escape with her now, that his only goal was to protect them. He shouted to her, "Run, Sarah, I'll find you." With a broken heart, Sarah threw herself into the wagon as her father whipped the horses into a desperate race toward town. She looked back, seeing Caleb alone against Silas's men, an unlikely hero in a losing battle. The last images she had were of Caleb, disappearing amidst the gunpowder smoke and the deafening sound of gunshots, overcoming adversity and growth. Escape to town was torture for Sarah. Every bump of the wagon, every distant shot she heard, was a stab to her heart. Upon arriving in Red Rock Creek, Sheriff Brody, a tall man of few words, was immediately alerted. Sarah, through sobs, tried to explain what had happened: Silas's invasion, Caleb's defense. Her parents, still in shock, confirmed the story, but the truth about Caleb being a fugitive complicated everything. The sheriff listened attentively, his face impassive, and promised to investigate. In the days that followed, Red Rock Creek buzzed with news of the confrontation at the Montgomery ranch. Silas, with his influence and money, quickly wove a web of lies, accusing Caleb of attempted robbery and the Montgomerys of harboring a dangerous criminal. Sarah's family's reputation was tarnished, and the town was divided between those who feared Silas and the few who whispered about Caleb's courage and the injustice of the situation. Sarah refused to give in to despair. Her love for Caleb and her fury at the injustice transformed her. She began visiting Sheriff Brody daily, not as a victim, but as a woman determined to fight for the truth. She recounted every detail of the day of the confrontation, Jedediah's brutality, how Silas had tried to kill Caleb and her father. The sheriff, though skeptical at first, began to notice inconsistencies in Silas's stories and the shine of sincerity in Sarah's eyes. He was a man of the law, and the truth, however inconvenient, mattered to him. Sarah also sought unexpected allies. She approached the town's older residents, those who had suffered from Silas's ruthless tactics and who, deep down, hated him. One of these people was Martha, the saloon owner, a shrewd woman with a vast network of information. Martha, who had witnessed Silas's cruelty many times, discreetly decided to help Sarah, providing information about Silas's and his henchmen's movements. The weeks turned into torment. There was no news of Caleb. Sarah imagined the worst but refused to lose hope. She spent hours on the porch, looking at the distant mountains, wondering where he might be. Her father, proud of his daughter's strength, but scared of the consequences of defying Silas, warned her to be careful. But Sarah knew she couldn't turn back. She had found her voice and her courage. On a crucial day, Sheriff Brody summoned Sarah to his office. He had an arrest warrant for Caleb Riggs, but he also had evidence incriminating Jedediah, and by extension, Silas, in other criminal activities, discoveries that Sarah had indirectly helped him unearth. Brody looked at Sarah with new respect. "Miss Montgomery," he said, "I know this marriage to Silas Blackwood is your only way out. But I also know there's a greater truth here. What are you willing to do to bring that truth to light?" Sarah didn't hesitate. She would do whatever it took. The wedding day arrived, bringing with it a dense, damp fog that clung to the town of Red Rock Creek like an omen. The small church was packed, with the town's elite and Silas's henchmen occupying the front pews, their faces impassive or falsely smiling. Sarah, in her white wedding dress, felt her heart pound, not from nervousness, but from a mix of fear and an iron courage she didn't even know she possessed. Her parents, pale and anxious, were by her side, relieved but also tense, unaware of their daughter's true plan. Silas Blackwood, in a dark suit that made him seem even more imposing, waited at the altar with a victorious and complacent smile. He cast a glance at Jedediah, who stood near the door, his face still marked by the kettle burn, his small, suspicious eyes sweeping the crowd. The organ began to play the wedding march, a sound that, to Sarah, seemed more like a requiem. As Sarah walked slowly down the aisle, her gaze swept the church. There was no sign of Caleb. A pang of despair hit her, but she stifled it. It was all or nothing. When she reached the altar, Silas extended his hand to her, and Sarah accepted it, feeling his cold, possessive touch. The pastor began the ceremony, his words echoing in the church, muffled by the beating of Sarah's heart. The moment the pastor asked, "Sarah Montgomery, do you take Silas Blackwood to be your lawfully wedded husband?" a heavy silence fell over the church. Sarah took a deep breath, looked at Silas, at her parents, and then at the door, where Jedediah stood. "No." Sarah's voice rang out clear and strong, echoing throughout the church. A shocked murmur swept through the congregation. Silas, his face contorted with fury, turned to her. "What did you say, girl?" he growled, his voice low and dangerous. Before Silas could react, Sheriff Brody entered the church, flanked by 2 deputies, their badges gleaming in the dim morning light. He walked directly to the altar. "Silas Blackwood, Jedediah," the sheriff announced, his voice grave and firm. "You are both under arrest for a series of crimes, including coercion, attempted murder, and false accusations." The church erupted in chaos. Silas's henchmen moved, but the deputies and some brave citizens, whom the sheriff had secretly recruited, were ready. Silas tried to grab a hidden weapon, but Brody was faster, immobilizing him. Jedediah tried to flee but was surrounded. In the midst of the confusion, a figure appeared through the side door of the altar. It was Caleb Riggs, pale and with a bandaged arm, but alive. He hadn't died in the confrontation. He had managed to escape and wounded, crawled to town, hiding with the help of Martha, the saloon owner, who had hidden and treated him, and who alerted the sheriff to the truth. Martha had secretly worked with the sheriff and Sarah, knowing of Silas's crimes. Caleb and Sarah looked at each other, a mix of relief, love, and victory in their eyes. The revelation that Caleb was alive, and that he had been crucial in exposing Silas, left everyone stunned. The arrest of Silas Blackwood and his henchmen marked the end of an era of tyranny in Red Rock Creek, the church, moments before a stage for tense drama, now breathed an air of relief and hope. Sarah's accusations, once seen as the desperation of a reluctant bride, were corroborated by the evidence collected by Sheriff Brody and, more crucially, by Caleb Riggs's testimony. The truth, finally, had come to light. Sheriff Brody, satisfied with having unraveled a web of crimes that had long haunted the town, assured Sarah and Caleb that, given the circumstances and Caleb's vital role in exposing Silas, he would receive a fair trial without the weight of the rancher's influence. Later, after legal proceedings and Jedediah's confession, Caleb had his sentence reduced for cooperation and for his contribution to Silas's downfall, becoming a free man, at least from prison. His reputation, however, would take time to rehabilitate. But the people of Red Rock Creek, tired of Silas's dominion, began to see him in a new light. Sarah's parents, initially shocked and ashamed by the turn of events at the wedding, eventually understood the depth of their daughter's decision. The bankruptcy, which had seemed certain, was avoided with the help of neighbors and friends who mobilized, relieved by Silas's downfall. The Montgomery family, though their reputation was momentarily shaken, gained the community's respect for Sarah's courage. The town of Red Rock Creek began to rise again, free from the oppressive shadow of Silas Blackwood. Small businesses flourished, and a sense of community and justice began to prevail. Sheriff Brody solidified his reputation as an upright and fair man, gaining everyone's trust. Sarah and Caleb, now together, faced the challenge of building a life amidst the ruins of the past. Their gazes met with a new understanding, a love that had been forged in the fire of adversity. They knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but they had each other, and that was enough. Sarah's act of courage at the altar not only changed her own destiny, but also that of the entire town, ushering in a new era of hope and freedom. 5 years had passed since that fateful day at the altar. Red Rock Creek, once a shadowy town under the rule of Silas Blackwood, flourished, transforming into a vibrant center of commerce and community. The Montgomery Ranch, now prosperous, was a testament to the family's resilience and hard work, having regained their dignity and their place in society. Sarah and Caleb built a modest home on the outskirts of Red Rock Creek, a refuge of peace and love. Caleb, with time and community support, dedicated himself to carpentry, his skill and honesty earning him everyone's respect. He left his fugitive past behind, but never forgot the lessons life on the road had taught him. Sarah, in turn, became an active voice in the community, advocating for the less fortunate and ensuring that justice prevailed, just as she herself had done one day. Her blue eyes now shone with a serenity and strength that hadn't existed before. Sheriff Brody continued to be the guardian of the law, a symbol of integrity and a constant reminder that one person's courage can change the course of history. Martha, the shrewd saloon owner, prospered, her establishment becoming a gathering place where stories of the bride who killed at the altar were told and retold, always with a touch of admiration. The story of Sarah and Caleb became a legend in Red Rock Creek, a tale of forbidden love, sacrifice, and the courage of a woman who dared to defy power. They had a son, a boy with green eyes like his father's and his mother's determination, to whom they told the story of how love and truth, even in the darkest circumstances, always find a way to the light. Jedediah's scar served as a physical reminder of the dark past, But Sarah's smile and Caleb's tranquility were living proof that justice, in the end, always finds its way, and that true love can overcome any obstacle, no matter how daunting. The story of the bride who killed at the altar remained not as a tragedy, but as an epic of redemption and a testament to the transformative power of a single act of bravery, echoing for generations as a reminder that, even in the Old West, the human heart was the most untamable force of all.